Hi, welcome to Variety Tech today. In a previous episode about Space Jam, you might remember I was talking about how animation took a change in the 90s from being fully optical to being being produced via computer, where they would still hand draw the animation, but then scan it in the computer and then add digital ink and paint. Anyway, that kind of segues into The Lion King. This was produced using the system that Disney would use, CAPS, C-A-P-S. And because this animation was finalized on the computer, it, out of necessity, has a finite resolution, whatever was their top rendering resolution at the time. So they can't just go to a film strip and rescan it in 4K and magically get more detail because the detail is made up of those pixels from the computer. It wasn't done in 16 by 9 widescreen though. That was a exact standard that was settled upon later for HD TVs. Remember, in the 90s, this was when you'd have a similar shaped widescreen at the theaters, which was often 1.85 to 1 or 1.66 to 1. And then at home, on home video, VHS, they'd have 1.33 to 1 or 4 by 3 equivalent. So anyway, CAPS could render a 2K file, which was big for the time, and even nowadays, most computer animation is rendered only at 2K because 4K just takes way too long. But anyway, this 2K file was at an unusual 1.60 to 1 aspect ratio. The intended ratio was often 1.66 to 1, or it could be safely matted to 1.85 to 1 depending on the theater. And also you could alternate between allowing more on the top and bottom or more on the sides, and then allow more on the top and bottom for the home video release at 1.33 to 1. So really this would lower the resolution further to sub 2K really. But what's nice about the Blu-ray of The Lion King is that they got those straight digital renderings. So just like with a lot of other films, when you've got the 4K reissue of The Lion King, it can't really be 4K. It's just upscaled, and the color grading has changed. And honestly, it's not a huge difference. I actually prefer the standard Blu-ray. The color looks better, like more like it was supposed to be originally, not this more dramatic one that's really a new recreation of it. And speaking of new recreation, and one that I don't think is a bad thing, is the 3D conversion. This is it again, with the lenticular cover. This was released to theaters in 3D in 2011, one of the early 3D conversions. For the time when this came out, it was very good. Remember, a lot of conversions that came out that year, around that time, were very weak or even outright inaccurate. But much care was taken with this. Here's some of the notes from a stereographer that were made in relation to the conversion. You can see the giraffe is at 0 parallax, for instance, and you've got the markings for positive parallax and negative parallax, and then the depth maps were made from these notes. And while the depth maps do have slight gradients, nowadays conversions are much more detailed and accurate and rival native 3D. But this was very good for the time. And even though it isn't as good as modern conversions, it still has very powerful parallax, especially in the opening scene when you got that bird flying into the camera. It's awesome. But throughout the whole thing, too, it was more powerful than a typical 3D movie of the time. But since the depth maps weren't as detailed as modern ones, it did have more of a cutout look. Like, for instance, this shot of Simba here, it looks like a flat cardboard being viewed from an upwards angle. He didn't have any roundness to him. So, but the fact that it was a 2D animated cartoon, it kind of worked. And it was kind of reminiscent of old Viewmaster reels. So regardless, this is still a great enveloping way to watch it and a lot of fun. And P.S., of course, the remake was also in 3D from the beginning, using modern conversion methods. Visually, it looks very good, and I can't complain about the story because It's exactly the same. You know, with remakes, often they take the basic characters and concepts and spin it into something new. Lots of Disney remakes are like that, but this was truly unusual in that the remake was so often a scene for scene, line for line replay of the original. They added a few new things, but 90 something percent I'd say was shot for shot remake, just photorealistic. And if they're going to do it, I'm glad they brought James Earl Jones back because, of course, he has that beautiful baritone in it. So that worked great. All right, see you next time.